Hi there. I'm Tercy, and I want to welcome you to the Unreasonably Grateful podcast, Living in Grace by Choice. So, I'm actually playing a little catch up here because I got behind not feeling well between Christmas and New Year's. And I just want to remind you all that I love that you're sharing your journey with me and that I get the opportunity to share my journey with you. So, thank you for that. And whether you're listening for the first time or you've been with me for a while, welcome. I'm so grateful that we get to share this time together. And then remind you, I don't have your answers. You do. But sometimes when someone shares with us just their story or their process, um, it gives us a glimpse into what might be possible for ourselves. And that's my hope. I'm simply sitting down here each week, letting some of the wisdom that's grown over these soon 39 years of recovery after living with an eating disorder for 20 years, and then healing from the sexual abuse and the addiction. Now beginning that journey 39 years ago when I was 36 years old. So, yes, super grateful. I can still remember when I couldn't get through one day without either starving myself or binging. And it's hard for me to even wrap my head around that it's coming up on 39 years. So, really grateful, really, really grateful for that. So, the other thing I want to remind you is on Tuesday, I offer individual sessions. And basically, what those sessions are just an opportunity for me as an elder to sit and listen. And what I've discovered in the past few years is I can see the beauty in you that perhaps you can't see yet, or perhaps that beauty's being diffused by some judgment, criticism of yourself, or one that you've taken on that perhaps others had of you. And so, um, by just having somebody reflect back to you the beauty and the divinity that they see, it frees you up a bit and moves you along on your path. And I think that we're all on a path of learning to love more deeply, learning to be less judgmental, learning to be kinder and more compassionate, to get along, actually. Even as a child, I used to ask my dad, why is it so hard for people to get along? Still a question I have. Um, my dad's not here to ask the answer of anymore, but why is it so hard for us to get along? Why is it we get so caught up in our positions or our judgments, assessments, or our opinions, or just in being right? So, anyway, on those Tuesdays, I make myself available and you can sign up for it. It's a donation basis at tercyinglehart.com. And yeah, if you're something you're interested in, I'd love to sit with you. Okay, so this particular episode is making sense of loss. So there was a big loss in our extended community between Christmas and New Year's. And one of our daughter in law's good friends lost her partner and his two daughters. They were merged families, and she had left an island in the Caribbean before him with her daughter. And then he and his two daughters and the pilot all died in a tragic crash shortly after takeoff. And one of those little girls was a classmate of one of our grandchildren, one of our grandsons. And so that family, that extended family and community was all dealing with the tragic loss of death, particularly death of young lives. And I just want to say a little bit about this. So, all of us will experience loss in this lifetime. Perhaps not as dramatic or as tragic as that, and I certainly hope not. But it happens. And sometimes you hear people say, how could God let that happen? And I don't even know that that's the question that we want to be asking. I don't know that God lets or not lets those things happen. I know that they happen. And there's tragedy in lots of ways throughout a lifetime. There's divorce, there's death, there's disease, there's pain, there's suffering. And I think a better question is, are we relying on a loving God before the tragedy? And can we rely on a loving God through and after the tragedy? I had a dear friend, I have a dear friend who's actually getting married next weekend, who experienced the tragic loss of a son who was murdered late last year. And I wasn't there physically because we had already moved, but I've talked with her and texted with her, and I've watched her journey. And what I think is so remarkable and beautiful about her journey is she did rely on a loving God before the tragedy. And she did rely on a loving God through the tragedy. And she's still relying on a loving God after the tragedy. And I think that's a more appropriate and perhaps profound question, is who are you relying on right now? Right now, whether you're before, in, or after some trauma or tragedy in your life. What do you rely on for your source of strength? How do you navigate this day, this moment? And how will you navigate the next day, the next moment, regardless of what happens, whether it's beautiful and amazing or whether it's tragic and painful? What is the source of your strength? What is the source of your power? What is the source of your ability to navigate whatever the circumstances might be? See, I think when we ask the question, how would a loving God let this happen? We're actually demonstrating our lack of connection. We're actually demonstrating our lack of faith, our lack of power. Because otherwise, we would be having that question with that loving God. God, help me through this. I can't understand what's happening here. I'm at a loss. Help me see. Help me know. Give me the wisdom. Those would be the questions, rather than we're somehow on the outside looking in and wondering, when you're actually designed to be on the inside with that loving God and letting that loving God navigate you through whatever win or loss you might currently or will soon be experiencing. So, this week, as you head into your day to day life, as you take each breath that is a gift from that kind and compassionate and loving God, ask yourself, what is the source of my strength and my power? Whether things are going the way I would like for them to go, or whether I'm having to deal with something that is difficult for me to comprehend or understand. And I don't have to deal with it alone, because you don't. Okay. And I'll see you next week.